So I saw something really interesting on social media recently, and it was about this guy who was quite out there. He was really like effing and blinding, which is fine, but he was speaking about peptides and FDA approval. And a lot of people recently have been saying how peptides are not FDA approved, you shouldn't be using them, debunking them, etc. But a lot of products are not FDA approved that people consume every single day.
Mhm.
Most vitamins are not FDA approved and can cause huge health problems if used in the wrong way. For example, vitamin D. Vitamin D can cause massive toxicity if it's not used in the right way. So, my question to you is, what's your take, given the years you've got in pharma, on FDA approved products? What's your take on peptides? I want to open up this topic to see exactly what your take is on the biggest selling products out in 2025, 2026 is peptides. Everyone's talking about peptides, whether used right, whether used wrong, everybody is talking about them. So what's your take?
This is a very controversial topic. And the reason why I say that, I'm going to come back to peptides right at the end, right? But let's cover the FDA part of it first. We all understand what the FDA are. They're an organization that basically say that the drug's been tried and tested and it's okay and it's allowed to be used.
Mm.
That's the given thing. And most people out there, when they say, I'm only going to use a drug which is FDA approved, or the UK equivalent is if something is MHRA approved, in my opinion, yes, it counts, but in complete honesty, if you ask me alone, does it really mean anything? The answer to your question is no. And the reason why I say that is because from the moment you wake up in the morning till the moment you go to bed at night, whether you take a supplement, whether you use a cream, whether you use anything, 90% of those things are not FDA approved. 90% of the things that I use are
What
not
does it
FDA
actually
approved.
mean, though? For something to be FDA approved, what
Yeah.
does that actually like? What is that in a nutshell? What is that process in
Uh,
a nutshell? Like, what
That
does that mean for that something got FDA approved stamp on it? What does that actually mean?
Okay, so every single if I invented a drug, so at the moment, this is quite interesting because at the moment, I'm now looking with my pharma company to do something to bring a drug to market.
Yeah.
Now, the process that we need to go through is this: is here being in Dubai, it's a completely different process. But if you look at FDA approval, that's the American process. It's the Food and Drug Administration. Okay, they say yes. Everybody across the world looks at them as the beacon of regulations, and they say if you say it's okay, then it's okay. And the same thing with the MHRA. They look at medicines and consumables and appliances, and they say yes to that or no to that. The whole world looks at them. The stringency in terms of what they go through when you have that. Say, if I have a new drug, what I do with that drug in order to mass sell it to everybody, I have to go to the FDA, for example, or the MHRA. I have to go through stability tests. I have to go through multiple tests, and I have to spend a lot of money. Right,
So
that's
this
the
is
biggest
basically
thing.
down to money.
Pharma and big money.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I said it's controversial because, for example, if you look at the FDA, for you to go through an FDA application, it can go from weeks to decades. Now, somebody may ask,
Who owns semaglutide?
oh,
Who owns semaglutide? This is interesting.
Ozempic.
Owns semaglutide.
Ozempic is the brand name for semaglutide. I
What's the
forget
pharma
who
company?
owns semaglutide, but I do know that the new one that's coming out, Retta, is
Mm.
owned by Lilly.
And how easy does Lilly get things through on the FDA?
Well, they do because
Because really, it's the big boys that you know and how quickly things can get put through.
well, Lilly also own Cialis, which is one of the biggest erectile dysfunction medications, and Lilly own other big pharma names.
So is
So,
Viagra FDA approved?
of course, it's FDA approved, but Viagra, it's massive, and
The reason I'm saying this is because it's making a point to show that even though peptides are grandfather drugs, really, peptides have been around for many, many years.
yeah,
So if we look at grandfather drugs, which are drugs that have been around for a long, long period of time, but didn't need to be FDA approved when they first came out, and now obviously they get FDA approved. If we look at just that course of drugs, you look at the actual pharma company and how quickly those pharma companies get things put through the books.
yeah.
Because if you brought up earlier on the COVID vaccination was put into thousands and thousands of people, and that was not FDA approved before that was put into it. It only became FDA approved after COVID, which is ironic considering everybody had now been injected with it.
And if any, just in case anybody decides to quote me, if you look at when COVID came out, because we call it COVID-19, or it came out in 2019, the first FDA approved COVID vaccine came out on the 23rd of August, 2021, post COVID,
Right.
right towards the end of that. So most of the four vaccines for COVID are still going through. Some of them have either been FDA approved. I think three of them have, and one is still awaiting approval. But they went through what they call FDA authorization because it was an emergency vaccine that was required at the time. But coming back to the question that you asked me at the beginning,
Yeah.
what does it mean for something to be FDA approved? It means, in a nutshell, Big pharma companies pay lots of money. You're looking at 100 million pounds or dollars, and it goes all the way up to, I mean, the sky's the limit. I've seen even some which got to $1 billion. Okay. Now, the big pharma and who can afford this? Big pharma. So if big pharma can afford this, that means that the product from A to Z gets through the fastest. And I said it takes weeks to decades. The more money you have, the quicker it's going to happen.
And look what's got through out of all the peptides, all the weight loss products. What's
Right.
the biggest selling market? Weight loss. Weight loss is huge.
So if you look at the biggest peptides at the moment, which went through, they all your insulin-related weight loss drugs, because they know that there's going to be a mass market for them. So all the big pharma companies got onto that, and what they then did was they then formulated those drugs, bought the patents, and they decided to sell them, and they got it FDA approved immediately. So you're talking about semaglutide, you're talking about which is Ozempic, you're talking about Mounjaro, you're talking about Reta, which is now going to become FDA approved very soon.
And look at the side effects from Reta.
Yeah, and then you have that. This is not, look, coming back to the whole peptides argument. So as far as I understand, I know we spoke about this earlier on because I was of the understanding that BPC 157 was FDA approved, but apparently it's not.
It's BPC 157. They were trying to get it FDA approved. So whilst they approved some of the parts of the dossier to have this FDA approved, it hasn't gone through yet.
Yeah.
But I think people jumped on the fact of hearing that it was going to be FDA approved, and it was like, oh, it's definitely FDA approved, when in fact it's not. But something like BPC 157, if we just take that hasn't been FDA approved just yet. BPC 157 exists in your gut. I've said this in the past. Now it's obviously used for muscular problems, etc., and they've realized there are various other reasons that you can use it. Those weren't the original indications it was put out there for. It's in the gut.
Yeah.
But my thing is that you can take Reta, for example, that's going to be FDA approved. If that's not already FDA approved.
No, it's in the process.
Semaglutide, of course, is in the process because it's a weight loss, and weight loss is huge. But BPC 157 is way less harmful than semaglutide, than Reta, than all of these weight loss drugs, because the weight loss drugs in turn have adverse effects later on. They're not just something we haven't been in this industry for long enough to see the adverse effects that are going to come through. This has become massive over the past, I don't know, 48 months, let's say, for example. It's become really, really big. So if we haven't got enough case studies yet, and there might be people that will say, oh, there have been case studies, but there are not enough case studies, because we need 10 to 15 years to 20 years of case studies to see what happens with people later on after they've been taking these products. BPC 157 is way safer. TB500, way safer.
I know, but you've got the argument here, which is if you look at both, and you're a business person, you've got BPC 157,
you're going to do the weight loss,
and you've got the weight loss one. That's going to make you, pardon my French, shitloads of money, because loads of people are going to want it. Or you've got this one here, which is body protection compound, and all that really does is it helps your gut. I mean, I take it for that, and it causes a process called angiogenesis, which helps with the recovery of tendons and ligaments. From a business perspective, no one really cares about that. They care more about the side of
weight loss,
because that's going to make me more money as a businessman. Hence the reason why, as a pharma company, which one would you jump on? This one.
Of course. It's like the chemo world. You jump on the chemo world, the weight loss world. These are massive selling.
Yes. But from a business perspective, that's how they look at it. So when it comes back to the FDA argument, which is who can afford to pay for the FDA approval? Big pharma.
So a lot of people out there at the moment the main thing on TikTok and Instagram and socials was people saying it's not FDA approved, you shouldn't be using it, etc., etc. But my opening line was, just because something isn't FDA approved, it doesn't mean that it's bad. Of course, you shouldn't go and just take things without doing your research, and everyone needs to do their due diligence on products that they take themselves. But so if we take something like GHKCU, which is great, apart from having the copper uglies in the beginning, but you can take zinc to counteract that. We have seen amazing results from this. You just have to be careful with the copper, obviously, but it's FDA approved topically, but it's not FDA approved to inject.
Yeah.
So that's another product that you can just look at. And GHKCU is fantastic. It's a great anti-aging product.
But you know what? You know, on the flip side of it, one of the things I'm going to say is, well, in addition to me saying it's Big Pharma that run FDA approval, the biggest take on this is that when you look at any products, given what you take, supplements, peptides, which haven't been FDA approved, the key thing here is, so long as there's enough clinical studies available and people know how to take it safely, which is the most important thing, that's the key thing with it. And the biggest takeaway from that, or the biggest example of that, is Retta, because Retta hasn't yet been FDA approved, but people are still taking it. So on one hand, you've got lots of people taking it, and they're taking it incorrectly because they're taking the wrong dose at the wrong times, or they're overdosing on it.
Because I think people don't know what it does.
Yes, so there's
Yeah.
not enough of a side effect profile on it. But the
Yeah.
moment Lilly then make that FDA approved, and you've got all these studies or you've got the guidance on it,
Yeah.
then it's okay. That's my only biggest takeaway from that,
Yeah.
which is you can take it doesn't mean that anything which is not FDA approved is okay. You just have to take it safely.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
If you the problems with Retta, because obviously you brought that up, so maybe people understand what are the problems with Retta. Problems with Retta and semaglutide, all of them, is that it slows your stomach emptying out. That's one of the main issues here. The issue is because people don't realize that's what it's doing, and then it causes stomach problems later on.
Yeah.
Because it slows down the stomach emptying, does that mean it alters your insulin levels a lot? So if you suddenly had something that was quite sugar-based and your stomach is slowing the emptying process, and then you have something else that's quite sugar-based, can that cause your insulin levels to spike?
It completely affects your insulin levels.
But is that why people end up in hospital with it?
Everything in the human body is governed. Your body, without all of these drugs, decides how much food you need per day based on your insulin levels going up and down.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I'm just talking about it from a very basic standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything is related to hormones. So the
Yeah.
hormone that's related with food intake, the main one, apart from ghrelin, which is the one for hunger, is insulin. Now, if you're messing around with your insulin levels and you're tricking your body to think that it no longer needs food, it's messing with your insulin levels. So the answer to your question is yes. And that's how these drug companies make money. Because if you look at where these drugs originate from, they were designed to be drugs taken for diabetes,
Yeah.
to treat diabetes, which treats insulin levels.
Yeah.
So if you're now taking this, and one of the side effects from that is you're taking it to treat your insulin levels, but hey, guess what? Hold on. You're now losing weight. That's how they made money from it, because it's a side effect. There's no difference between that and between Viagra. Viagra was originally given back in the day for pulmonary hypertension, which is a 1 in 100,000 heart condition which happens. What they noticed from that is every time they gave it to a bloke, he ended up having an erection. And they thought, right, we're not going to make money from the pulmonary hypertension
Gonna make
angle.
money from
We're going to make money
yeah.
from erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
And that's why they jumped on it, and that's their marketing. Again, pharma.
Yeah.
As a businessman, what sells better?
Yeah, but getting that approved as well, that can be so dangerous. Viagra used wrong can be so dangerous. So it's like, I don't really understand how certain things do get FDA approved and they don't. But again, as you said, it's money and it's pharma and it's
But then at the same time, if it's used correctly,
can be great.
then it's great. And that's the thing that I
Yeah.
go back to with peptides. All the peptides or all the supplements that
Yeah.
are not FDA approved
Yeah.
are okay so long as they're taken properly. So
I think people need to stop looking at TikToks of, people that aren't perhaps as educated in the chemical makeup and what a peptide actually does for the body. And they're just listening to what somebody else does and they're taking the same stack. Because I see so many times women coming on, I'm 50, I take all of these peptides, blah, blah, blah. And you've got other women saying, oh, send me your stack. That could be really detrimental for somebody else. Like that might not be the stack for you. When we put people on a peptide program, we do a blood test first. We have to do loads of testing first before we say, yeah, this is the right program for you. So I think one of the biggest things with social media that needs to be really looked at is don't just look at a peptide stack that your friend is taking or someone else is taking and think if that's the right stack for you, because there are loads of health things we have to look at first of all before you start taking a peptide stack.
one way of ensuring that you're taking the correct product or you're taking the right amount of, let's say, for example, peptides or something else, which is medical related, is ensuring that you go to someone who is trained and ideally medically trained in that.
Yeah.
It's not to say that everybody who does it is medically trained, because
Yeah.
I've also met people who are not medical, but they know a lot
They're
more
great.
about
They know a lot.
peptides than me.
Yeah.
You just want to make sure that you go to somebody who has got the correct amount of knowledge. Now,
Yeah.
again, this then links back to the whole FDA thing. The reason why it's trusted is because it's medical and it's based on studies and it's based on a level of trust.
Yeah.
If you're using the same thing and you give me information and that's based on evidence, it's based on studies, it's based on something that's been tried and tested, then for me, that becomes a trusted thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I come from.
Yeah.
And that's what I think about peptides.
Yeah. I think we should end this by just reiterating that just because something isn't FDA approved, it doesn't mean that it's a bad product. Most of the multivitamins sitting in everyone's cupboards right now are not FDA approved. at all. But
Absolutely.
yet you take all these vitamins every single day, just thinking that they're doing the right thing for you. And actually, the multivitamins could be making you very toxic.
If
So
taken
if
incorrectly.
taken incorrectly.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, I think that due diligence, making sure you do your own research. You have Claude now, you have ChatGPT, you can
Mm-hmm.
ask for research from the past 10, 15 years on this product. It's
Yeah,
really easy to do your own research on things now. Just
yeah.
doing that research is really important before you start throwing blame or thinking that something's not FDA approved or whatever. I think it's just, do your own research.